Hey docs, I'm Dr. Rob DiMartino, and I wanted to make this video today to share a story that I unfortunately hear too many times talking with different chiropractors throughout the country about the problems that they're experiencing, the situations that they're running to in practice and how it's affecting not only their patients, but also their personal lives. And hopefully offer you a helpful tip at the end of this if you find yourself in that situation. As a practicing chiropractor myself, the functional medicine protocols that I created in my office were designed just for that, to be used in my office. I designed them to help my patients that I saw coming in with all these different types of problems, a lot of them in the autoimmune category of what was going on. And I've had the really good fortune over the last 6 odd years or so to be able to take what I've learned and help doctors put that into their own practices so they could advance the type of results that they were getting. They could advance the amount of money that they were bringing in by putting in these additional lines of services. And the reason that it ultimately always worked was because it was based on value. They always say in the absence of value, the only consideration is cost, right? So when I talk to doctors from around, what are they experiencing? It's pretty much universal. What everybody's looking for patient-wise is it's all competition on cost, not value. There's all these different places opening up, and how are you going to compete with a $12 adjustment? So what's ending up going on is that all this competition around them is basically commoditizing our services, which is just dropping the prices to basically next to nothing. How are you going to compete with a $12 adjustment and no examinations? And again, how is the patient going to get a great result off of something like that? And what doctors around me are doing, and I'm sure they're around there doing the same thing with you, is they're all dropping their prices to compete on cost. Because you all get those patients who call your clinics, and my staff gets it, and it makes them crazy, because when they get the phone call, before they're even done with their greeting, the patient asks, well, how much do you charge for an adjustment? Guess what? That patient is never going to become a patient of yours unless you are the cheapest person in town, which I don't recommend that you be. This just leads to just a tremendous amount of fear base in our profession. It leads to a tremendous amount of worrying in our profession. How are you going to keep up with overhead? How are you going to keep up with payroll? Are you going to make the money that ultimately you deserve if you're getting the kind of health results that you should be getting for people if you're practicing the way that you should be practicing? And at the end of the day, this is the stuff that I hear all the time from chiros that they're kind of consistently worrying about. And it's what they will call a race to the bottom. If we all just start cutting ourselves in prices, we're going to race to see who gets the lowest first, and eventually it's just going to hurt every single one of us. So here's another story to hopefully illustrate that point. A really good friend of mine, actually, a buddy of mine from chiropractic school, calls me up one day, and he had a really super successful practice, making 6 figures, but also running a 6-figure overhead. He was at the point where he was medically integrated. And from December 31st to January 1st, the entire insurance climate in his state changed. And it basically went away with no warning. So now all of a sudden he's sitting there with this huge overhead, and he's got no way of really filling that in. And he called me up and said, hey, you do cash services, you do all these programs. Is there any way you could come out and put this into the clinic? So we got his staff trained, we got them set to go. And in no time, that same month, they ran the same amount of finances that they did when they were doing everything medically integrated. He got to keep his office, got to keep his overhead, and made the statement to me of it would have taken him at least a year to learn all of those protocols, programs on his own. We would have never been able to put it in place and turn it around that same way. Now, the cool part about it, the best part of the whole story is, yeah, he's making money and the finances are great. He got to keep all his staff. He wanted to keep his people. But he's in love with practice again because he's enjoying getting these kind of results with these kind of difficult cases. So, the great news about all of this stuff is there's options, and there's a lot of good options out there for you too. Just like the functional medicine programs that we will teach, we tend to look for people who have a little bit more advancing type of problems because we can get really good results, predictable results with those kind of problems. And this opens your practice up to have a whole group of people now who are out there. I promise you, they're looking for someone to help them. It's not how much you charge within the first 3 seconds of them calling. They're looking for people to come up with a solution to the problem that they have. They're active, they want it, they're willing to pay you, and they're willing to pay you cash for it as far as you can provide them a great value. And truthfully, that's really the easy portion of this, because getting some of these problems well with the way that we do it is actually the simplest part of the whole thing. And they'll pay $5,000 to $10,000 for a cash service, and it's a fair value, because what you're giving them back in return is so great that nobody really complains about it, because it's ultimately a fair value. What you're giving them back is probably worth more than that ultimately at the end of the day. So you get great results, your head hits the pillow, you sleep great at night because patients are doing great. Patients are happy because they're getting the results that they want, ultimately from somebody out there who can actually help them. Because we're basing it off of value, not cost. And again, when the value is there, people are more than willing to do it, and they're happy to get well, which is ultimately, again, the greatest part of this whole thing. So these programs can be put in very simply. They can put in with very little cost. No crazy overhead jumping, no 100 more staff members to kind of run all these different types of things. And they can be put in, and if you do this the right way, they can be run by staff members. And you need no specialized training in this. You don't need no specialized degree, no specialized anything. You just need to know how to run those different types of protocols. That opens you up to be able to do more things, have more time, and hopefully you spend that time expanding your clinic out so you can go out there and help more people. Because ultimately, hopefully at the end of the day, that's the reason that we all got into this. So I hope this video made some sense for you. I hope it helps out. Hopefully it's not hitting you in those right kind of spots, but if you are, please know that there's options. As always, I thank you for being in the trenches and going out there and trying to help people get better with all these types of problems. If you know somebody who would think this information is kind of cool, please feel free to share it with them. We'll talk again soon.